Welcome to another episode of the One Life podcast. We're going to dive deeper into the weekend sermon, week number 3 of parables. You mentioned this was your favorite.
Yeah, I would say I wanted to do parables to preach this message.
Mm-hmm.
It was a good time to cast some more vision leading into Easter, and always try the weeks leading in, just reminding our people of why we do what we do.
Yeah.
So yes, I was really excited to preach these parables, this message.
Yeah. Before we dive into it, we are filming this podcast the day of the national championship game. Obviously, I'm heavily invested as a Florida Gator fan. Our One Life podcast group that has 40 people in it is now between just 2 individuals. Both those guys happen to be at our East Mesa campus.
Shout out to East Campus.
We know a lot about basketball over there.
Great,
it's in our discipleship curriculum.
Rite of passage.
If Houston wins tonight, Mr. Kyle Oberles is the winner.
All right.
And if Florida wins tonight, God has shown his favor on us, and TJ Crimmins is the winner of the bracket pool.
I'm excited. Obviously, I'm for your sake. I don't really care who wins, but it would be great for friends, for people that get to connect with, because it means so much.
Yeah.
We'd
have a pretty good back-to-back years if Michigan wins the football national championship and then Florida turns around and wins the basketball.
It's pretty great.
Be an awesome 24-25.
When's the last time Florida won a national championship?
18 years ago. I was 11 years old.
Wow.
Yeah.
This is significant.
2007. Yeah, we were in the Final Four in 2014. Lost in the semifinals, but
Final Four was you were sending me pictures of you and your boy who's old enough to understand everything that's going on.
Mm-hmm.
It's really cute. Those are fun times.
Hand over his heart, ready to go. National anthem. He was locked in early.
He's ready to roll.
Yeah. First half is pretty boring for him. He's in the phase of math right now.
Okay.
So he's like, Dad, we're up by 2 points. I'm like, yeah, good job. He's just constant adding and subtracting during the game.
It's fun. I love it.
It's good times.
Yeah, man. It's been fun. And the interaction has been great with people.
Yeah.
With the tournament. So
all right, here we go. Parables, week number 3. So I think one of the things that stuck out the most, and I even talked about it at the end of service, because we always celebrate the offering, but then before that we cheer for like people that just made a decision, right? So, and the phrase you used was what we celebrate, or what we value is what we celebrate, right? So talk a little bit about that, not only in context to the parable, but how that breathes into many areas of our life, including how we orchestrate like a weekend service.
Well, the parable, it's the Father's throwing a party and everybody's invited to it. And so that's the idea. He doesn't want people to miss out on the celebration, on rejoicing. So you take that for us, if you go to our whole weekend service, we purposely celebrate 3 things. Right after worship, and we clap for obviously worship. So we're here for Jesus. That's just understood.
Yeah.
But what do we value? We value guests coming into our building. So we're going to celebrate and clap and cheer for every first-time guest in our service. And then the second thing we cheer for, hey, come on, church, let's praise God for every single person who just prayed that prayer and gave their life to Jesus. So we celebrate salvation, baptism. That's what the message was about. Mm-hmm. And then at the end, we celebrate offering. It's our chance to give back to God. So strategically in our service, we make people cheer and celebrate the things that we value. We value generosity. We value salvation, obviously, and we value the fact that there are guests among us, both outsiders and religious. It's a really cool thing for us. So that's kind of some science and art behind what we ask people to do.
I think the majority of people would have no idea that there's even intention behind that.
100% there's intention.
Right.
Yeah, because we value what we celebrate. We celebrate what we value.
Yeah.
And it's a big thing for us.
We say even as a staff all the time that we like what gets repeated.
Yeah.
Right? Like we celebrate certain things, and then because of that, like certain things get repeated, right? Like we want to keep doing this because we celebrated it, which I think is a really important picture too.
We just walked out of an all-staff meeting, and the first 15, 20 minutes, sometimes 30 minutes of every all-staff is we just celebrate the wins. We're praising God for new people getting on serve teams. We're praising God for salvations. We're praising God for attendance records being broken and giving, because we want to see this repeated over and over and over again.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of science and strategy behind all of those things. It's not anything that happens on a stage on a weekend is not an accident.
Yeah.
Like
it's good.
It's on purpose.
So one of the big moments of the sermon was a question you asked where you said, what are you willing to disrupt
Yeah.
so Jesus can save one more person? Talk about that a little bit, but then also this idea of disruption is an idea of us being uncomfortable, right? And you said over and over again, like God's not just calling, and it even goes back to the parable of the talents, right? We're not called to just sit on it.
Right.
Here's an opportunity that we have. So what are we willing to disrupt? I love the illustration of like inviting them to Easter and then be like, well, what if they want to come to a different service?
Yeah.
I think some people are like, what if they ask to like come to lunch with me? Like I already have plans. I don't know if I could do this. So talk about that from a standpoint, the mindset of what are you willing to disrupt so Jesus can save one more person?
Well, you actually, so let's go back here. Why are people so afraid? It's because, and this is human nature. This is their church. They like their rhythm, their routine. They like where they park. They like getting a cup of coffee. They like where they sit. And we're honestly saying you can't come to that service on Easter because that service doesn't exist. There's not a 9 a.m. service at our Mesa campus. We already are disrupting their normal routine and rhythm, which bothers people. And so I think people just like consistency. So we talked about this at all staff. I think one of the reasons why our church is growing is because we are very consistent. You know what you're walking into.
Yeah.
We're not going to surprise you or do anything weird. Like we're just people feel comfortable inviting their friends to come. But here is the rub, man. This is what I've always noticed, and Amanda and I have even talked about it because it's been something for us. If they say yes, they're probably going to want to sit with us. But we have our group of people that we already sit with. And so in our mind, we always choose comfort over disruption 100% of the time, unless we're living our life on mission. And that was the whole purpose of this message of like, yes, go, like that's what we're called to do. We're called to turn our house upside down to find the lost coin. And the moment you think that's not what you're called to is the moment you're so disconnected from the gospel. So you have to live on mission because that's, if you claim to be a Jesus person, you're going to do the things that Jesus tells you to do. But then realizing, I probably should be generous, probably should tithe, as long as it doesn't really affect my lifestyle. No, you should probably disrupt that to be faithful. I probably should serve as long as it's not an inconvenience for me. No, that's the disruption that people need to make in their life.
Yeah. Do you think the enemy's number one tactic or strategy with American Christians is comfort?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, if he can make us comfortable and lazy, and this is the fear, right? Even as like a growing church, like you sit back and you're like, wow, this is pretty great. Like all of our needs are met. We have a little bit of margin. Like I think that's the number one place where churches and even pastors just get lazy and they get taken out of the game. It's not that they're doing necessarily anything sinful. It's just that they're coasting. And I'll go back to the parable of the talents. Like God can't trust people that are coasting with more. Like, okay, you're a 2-talent guy, and now the rest, or you're a 1-talent person who just buries it.
Yeah.
And when Jesus comes back, because that's the journey that he comes back, you're gonna have to give an account. You do not want to be a 1-talent person. So 100%, the devil's so smart because he's not going to distract you with necessarily sin. He's going to distract you with just being comfortable and lazy.
Yeah. What do you think is the best way to fight that? As far as like in general, just like should you, especially like routine people, I think it's worse. And we talked about this a couple weeks ago, like people that have the S personality. This is my routine. This is my tradition. This is what I do. What are some practical ways you would say like, hey, and I think Andy Stanley has the line of like, if it's not broke, break it.
Yeah.
Right. So like, what is the best strategy for people to avoid falling into the comfort trap?
I mean, so this is what Amanda and I do. And it kind of, so we have, like the monthly budget meeting in our home and we look at it. And I just think it's part of those conversations, those rhythms that you have to have of like, hey, okay, so I'm using the personal finance as the illustration. Like looking at it and making sure if something is broke, we fix it. But then we ask some serious personal questions about like where money is going. I think it's the same thing in your spiritual life. You need to be having a monthly introspection meeting of like, what's God telling you to do? Are you doing it? And maybe that's an accountability partner, but I think you just have to be willing to have that conversation. Most people don't. Most people just coast. Most people are like, yeah, I think we're fine. And you need somebody like to tell you that you're not fine. Like a real person who looks you eyeball to eyeball, kneecap to kneecap, and can like level with you. Of like, no, man, I think you're coasting here. I have a couple friends like that that are constantly challenging. So one of the elders recently was like, man, again, it's just, hey, what's some more vision for the church? Like feeling like we need some more vision moments. And he has a close enough relationship with me where he can ask me anything. And it's like, man, you're right. Like, because even me, like it's much easier to coast and to sit back and be like, wow, we've done pretty good, but that's not what we're called. Like as followers of Jesus, we are not called to sit back and coast. So you need good people in your life that know you better than probably even sometimes you know yourself and can challenge you to disrupt some things in your life, to risk.
So on that note, you used a phrase again that you've used several times, that the church is not a cruise ship.
Yeah.
It's a battleship, right?
Yep.
So speaking to that from a standpoint, and then honestly, like we can church nerd talk a little bit, but the church's different philosophy sometimes of being this Christian country club, consumerism. This is for you. Let me put on this production for the Christians so we can have a place of gathering, versus the idea of like, no, we're at battle each and every week with the enemy. Like, talk about that difference, how you came to your philosophy of ministry, and why One Life Church is a battleship, not a cruise ship.
I mean, so a little of my philosophy has shifted a little bit in the last couple of years. I think this just church nerd it for a minute then. So the phrase that I grew up with was, are you a seeker-sensitive church? Remember that phrase?
Yep.
And that was the big thing in the 90s of, 3 steps to a better life, and every message was based around that.
Yeah.
I think that it had its place, but I also think, and this is going to be super church nerd, like the world around us has changed. And we're not in neutral world, we're in a negative world. Like we are doing ministry in a completely different mindset than the 90s of how non-believers even view Christianity and the church as a whole.
Yeah.
So, which I think the seeker-sensitive movement was very effective in neutral world. But we are in negative world now. And so negative world means that we have to view this as a fight, as a battle, because the enemy, has shown himself for who he really is, and which is why we can't sit back and coast.
Yeah.
So I say that in both ways. I want to create a church where the non-church person can come in and feel completely comfortable, safe. But what I would say it this way, it's not a seeker-sensitive movement. What we're looking for is a presence-driven moment, because I think that's actually what brings people to the Lord, is having a real encounter with a living God, which is why I think worship has gone to another level, which I think interaction. So I'm not preaching anymore. So I think I did this maybe a year ago. It's in the Bible, especially in Proverbs, you have three groups of people. You have the evil, you have the wise, and you have the foolish. So here's how I view church today compared to where I did maybe even 7 years ago when I became the pastor here. 7 years ago, I would preach and be like, well, there's going to be like evil people, meaning like, I need to make sure that this doesn't offend them because they're far from God. And now I'm like, nope. Like my job is to rebuke the evil, encourage the wise, and then I need to, the foolish, I need to inspire the foolish. Like, hey, you just don't know, so I'm going to teach you. So my shift has been like, no, I'm going to push back the darkness. And here's the evil people they're evil.
Yeah.
Right? But if I don't do that, like the why or the foolish who just need to know what's right and wrong. So I've been, even the preaching, been way more forceful, way more, I would say, passionate about pushing back the evil, encouraging the wise, the follower of Christ, and just educating the foolish because they don't know. So when I say we're a battleship, that's kind of like what I'm talking about. Like we are pushing back the darkness, and I can't do it alone. And for us to push back darkness, we can't be lazy. We can't just sit back and coast. We've got to get to our battle stations. And so that's what we're encouraging people to do. So it's a little bit of shift in the last couple of years, even in my ministry, about the way I preach, how I'm preaching, and maybe even more boldness in the preaching.
I do feel like the foolish in today's culture seem to be more curious than ever.
That's right.
And we talked about this, I think, last week, but like the digital age of discipleship now, where people are just constantly consuming, but consuming with the intent of learning.
Yeah.
So even with like AI, like we're utilizing things to where we want to learn, we want to soak up as much information. So then what happens is the culture shift is like, okay, what does the church have to offer me beyond just in like an experience, but like, what do you actually believe? How would this really affect me? How would it affect my family? And they become more curious, which is actually a fun group of people to teach, because now you're at a
Absolutely.
point where you're like, yeah, we have a culture admitting I don't know for the first time.
Yep.
And I think even this last election would gear towards that, where the foolish, how Christians forever have viewed foolish as evil,
Yeah.
where the foolish are in there in the middle trying to figure out both sides and where they land on some things. And I think that has become easier even for the church to have boldness, because people in the culture are asking questions.
That's right. They're asking, and if we're not going to, I say this a lot, if we don't disciple them, the world's going to.
Mm-hmm.
So I do feel this like mantle right now of like, no, we've got to communicate. As I think the average dude, like dad, has kids my age, is wondering like, how am I going to have these conversations with my 12-year-old boy?
Mm-hmm.
And where are they going to go? Go to Joe Rogan, Theo Vaughn? I mean, those podcasters, or can we be another voice throughout their week that says, hey, let's help you with some of these things, because they just don't know.
Yeah. Do you feel like the culture, even post COVID, right, as a pastor, and you're looking out into a congregation that's even a lot larger than it was right when we came off of COVID, but how has the culture shifted in your eyes from a standpoint of maybe going back to Proverbs, but just in general of like, no, I'm preaching to a different demographic, or Mesa, the Valley, like things are different now than they were even 3-4 years ago?
I mean, I think people are people, so there's always truth to they're always the same. But I just think what people are consuming for 20 hours a week, we have got to have a different voice. So I would say my boldness has gone to the next level of, I think we're still dealing with the same things, but I'm not afraid to address certain topics anymore. Of like, I don't want to offend certain people. Listen, I'm going to offend them anyway. And but I take it seriously. I have people that are sitting out there that are just like, what does God's word say about, LGBTQ, transgender stuff? What does God's word say about immigration? All these types of things. We've got to be really, really bold in our stance. Nothing to back down from. But when you do that, when you become bold, what happens? Like the evil they're gonna reject it, and you're gonna get tons of arrows on that. But I'm biblically speaking, I'm pushing back the darkness, which is there's always going to be a fight. Where the foolish are sitting there being like, oh, thank God, this makes all the sense in the world. Thank God, like the Bible's clear on that. And what I've noted, and then the wise, they're just even more encouraged, right? Of like, yeah, we're moving the needle, we're pushing back the darkness. So you want, now this some more science behind it, you want to build brand advocates. And you do that not by catering to the evil or being afraid of what they think, no, by instructing the foolish and encouraging the wise. That's how you build a following. That's how you build a movement. That's biblically sound.
Yeah. Do you feel like it's overrated generational breakdowns necessarily in regards to like this generation likes this way of teaching, this generation likes this, or is it just as a whole we're all shifting with culture? Or do you feel yourself like if you had a super young adult, young married congregation versus the polar opposite where like everybody's gray hair, I have to talk to those demographics different? Or do you feel like it's not necessarily about generation as much as it is just the culture we live in?
It's the culture, but to answer your question, like what's true about the baby boomer generation is the seeker-sensitive movement worked really, really well in neutral world. So I would even say some of the baby boomer generation was in positive world, like the overall, like the world. And when I say positive, neutral, negative, it's how the world views the church.
Yeah.
So some of them grew up in positive and even neutral. So the way they think, this is because they don't see it this way. So it's a cultural piece of like, no, the young adults that we have attending, what they've been taught, what they've grew up with through their media, they've only lived in negative world. And so part of how I approach and teach them is vastly different than how. So yes, if I had a church that was just one age group, it would be different how I communicate, right? So I'm learning a lot preaching in negative world, but also knowing I have to instruct instruct the foolish, encourage the wise. There is some art that I'm trying to figure out personally in just some of my communication.
Yeah.
Some guys are doing it really, really well. But at the end of the day, what I think that is what our people are hungry for is not three ways to a better life. It's, man, preach another book of the Bible, and then lift out the principles through it. Like Ruth, for instance, 6 weeks in the book of Ruth, the response from that was amazing. People were like, I had no idea that I would love the book of Ruth as much as I did. I'm like, yeah, because it's the word of God. Just preach that and then bring the application into it. And you can rebuke the foolish and like stop having premarital sex. The Bible's really clear about that. And I'm not have to like rip a verse out of context. It's just, hey, this actually just comes up in Ruth. And then here's what happens, right? You have the foolish people who just need to be instructed that are like, I had no idea God's word says that. And then you have the people that grew up in positive world. They're like, you tell them, pastor, like these young people. And so you're hitting both.
Yeah.
It's just, I think it lands on them differently. So the way I communicate, I'm trying to think through, okay, this is a positive world, neutral, negative. All those things are going on inside. How do you communicate?
As we expand and like multi-site, different campuses, each campus takes on its personality.
Right.
Are you, the coaching you have, is it similar in regards to like different bodies of people and communicating certain ways? Like now we're not just talking generation, we're talking about their own subcultures within different communities. Speak to that too.
Well, I think, so here's the truth about multi-site church, but also multi-service church, is every service has its own culture. Like we were just talking about this off air before we started recording. Dave Spear was in the 9 a.m. service. And he's like, man, that joke got a big response. But the 10:30, like it was the
Dancing, Baptist dancing.
They heard dancing. Like Baptist, did you hear that? There was dancing. 9 o'clock, the crowd erupted. At 10:30, was like, like what's a Baptist?
Yeah.
I mean, it's that moment of, oh my goodness.
Yeah.
There are so many brand new Christians in this service compared to the more churchy crowd at 9. So to answer your question of like, yes, there's different subcultures, but I don't think it's necessarily location. I think it's honestly every single service.
Yeah.
And you were even telling me that that's happening at East.
East, yeah. Same thing, the 10:30. The church people love waking up early. I don't know what it is, but
Get it
the
out, check
9
it off
a.m.
the list, yeah.
When I preached 2 weeks ago, the 9 a.m.'s like, man, DJ just has it together. He's the funniest guy. He's really anointed. The 10:30 is like, who's this guy again? Why is this guy?
Why is
Can
he
we
up
send
here?
him to the other campus? Like, polar
It's true.
opposite response.
There's sometimes I walk off the stage and I'm like, did I say it wrong or different in this service? And then you just kind of go back to realizing, no, it's just a different culture in that service.
Juliet was only at the 10:30 that week. So I was like, I promise they liked it better in the 9. It wasn't this bad twice.
No, it does sometimes give you a complex for sure as a communicator of,
That's funny.
Was that not good?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's true.
Okay, I think one of the things that I've always found the most impactful is the other son of the lost son. Speak to that a little bit and how it's easy for church people to be critical, right? Even the wise, for example, and that, let's use the same illustration, like they can look down on the foolish, like, this guy, he doesn't have it together. Talk about that role, how you have to fight that as a pastor, even of like secure or isolating yourself to where it's like, oh, I have it together. God's going to bless me. I'm the son that paid attention. I'm the son that did things right. Talk about that, the mindset behind that, and just ultimately how that applies to us.
It's human nature for us. I think it goes back to being comfortable of just forgetting, man, like forgetting our salvation. Because we get to a certain point of religiosity. I don't know if that's a word or not, but it sounds
good. That's the name of this podcast.
I sound really, really smart. Like in all of our religious behavior, that we forget, man, like we were lost and we were on our way to hell. And if it wasn't for the grace of God, we would be in the same exact position as the other son. And it's so easy for us to get our focus off of that because we try to like rely upon our own strength and it's all this entitlement, which is just a normal human behavior. And that's what happened to the second son. I was here. What are you talking about? I've been here. And you never gave me a goat that I could celebrate with my friends. And again, it just sounds so internal, right? But if we're not careful, that's what happens in church life. That's what happens in religion. And the father's like, are you freaking kidding me? Like all that I have is yours. Like everything. And all you want is a goat? Like, come on. But that's what happens to religious people. we become entitled. We think everything's belongs to us, and we forget like where we were before Jesus. And I would even say, if you grew up in a Christian home and you don't have like some wild testimony,
Right.
it's even harder for people like even me, because I grew up in a pastor's home, and praise God for that. But man, like at the end of the day, what I deserve nothing. The only thing that I deserve is hell, and it's the grace of God that He saved me. So it's constantly reminding yourself of that. A guy that meant a lot to me when I was growing up, his name is John Holloman's from Grand Rapids, Michigan. And every time he would pray, his first start of the prayer was, Lord, help me never get over the joy of my salvation. And I'm like, what an incredible prayer to pray. So I would encourage Christian, man, one of the ways like you don't like rely upon your religion, your good works, your faithfulness, or what you think is faithful, is just go back and remind yourself of the joy of my salvation. If I really got what I deserved, I'd be in a Christless eternity.
Yeah.
And that's the cool thing of the Father. He's inviting both groups to come in. Just don't want the Christians to miss it.
Yeah. It's powerful.
Yeah.
All right. Well, one more week of parables. We are 2 weeks away right now. No, 1 week away right now from week of prayer, less than 2 weeks from Easter.
Let me just tell people this.
Yeah.
If you've never experienced just one of those days, a week of prayer, make it a point, get up early, move some things around in your schedule. I mean, God just does something really, really powerful in those weeks of prayer. And I love it because we're not even praying for ourselves. We're praying for the hundreds of names already that are on the walls.
Yeah.
And, we'll have thousands of names after next weekend.
We had blown away by sticky note response, both campuses. And if you're like, what the heck is sticky note response, right? We're putting sticky notes on the walls of each worship center, both campuses, of people that are far from God. Those are people that we're praying over.
For. Yeah.
It's really cool.
And then Easter.
Invite. Here we go.
Buckle up.
Yeah.
Super Bowl time.
It's exciting too. Like, as the team's pretty much ready to go for Easter, we're locked in. The next couple weeks are a little hectic, but we've prepared.
Yep.
But that following week, the baptism weekend, that's the one that's always like, yeah, Easter's great. You're expecting it. And then when it happens, it's great. We celebrate. But then the following week, to have the momentum of seeing all of those people.
It's like in church world, we're just stacking dominoes one after the other. And I was telling our team that we have a friend of ours getting baptized, Eric, shout out to Eric. He listens to the podcast. And he's invited like 42 people.
It's crazy.
And I think most of them have said yes. And the only reason why I know that is because we're hosting a little reception for him at our house afterwards. And he sends me the list of all the people he's invited. I'm like,
yikes.
was not planning on that many, but we're happy to do it. It's gonna be great.
There we go. All right. Well, you said it this weekend.
Yeah.
Remember, the church is not a building we sit in. It's a movement we get to be a part of to reach one more life for Jesus.